Andrew,
Yes, I'm back.
Andrew, listen for a moment, please. Have you made yourself host in my place? Because generally I can do it myself. If you can make me host, then I'll do it to the cloud. Then
No, I'm just an attendee. There is no host that I can see here. If you look at the participants, there is no
Yeah.
host.
Yeah, I don't see a host either.
So how do we do that? How do we make myself host? Does anybody know?
You
I
may
can try.
um do you know, Stuart, who set if you set up
I set it up and it's worked every other day. It's not working today. So anybody have a sense of how we can make me host? Sorry again for
It's
the,
I have claim host down here at the underneath the participant list.
Oh yeah, Stuart, I see it there now. You have to claim host. It looks like that be the way to go.
Thank you, Carl.
Make your claim, Stuart. Before
Okay,
some
so it says enter host key. I have no idea. 6 to 10 digit host key to claim host. Anybody know what that is?
It's in your email.
Okay, let me look here. Just 1 second. Thank you, friends. I see meeting ID. I see passcode.
Go right ahead, passcode.
Is you suggest the passcode?
I am suggesting passcode.
Okay, 1 second. Where are we now?
And if you have a password for Zoom, you might try that too.
Yeah, I do. So I'm going to put it first. I'm going to put in the passcode. Let me see if that works. The host you entered is invalid. Okay, so I'll put in the Zoom.
The other option is we really don't need a host, maybe, as long as we are all respectful.
Well, the thing is, I'm trying to record. We need a host to record.
Oh, to record.
I can record.
Well,
It is being recorded. When I came
Oh, the host, I can't do recording until the host is joined.
Yeah. You know, I think
Okay.
we all can. We can share the screen. We can do a lot of things, but we won't, right? Will it do
yeah,
it? Do it.
it's a different matter. We're wanting to record. So just 1 second.
It's being recorded, Stuart. When I came back in, the Honorable Andrews Phantom Note Taker is recording it. We can later edit out whatever you don't want in.
So are you saying that it's being recorded now?
Yes.
You're certain?
Let's see here. It's indicating is yes, I'm certain. I don't see recording notification in the group chat, but I do see that the Phantom is recording.
Okay.
You know, I didn't get the request. So, okay, I didn't get a request. You know, Stuart, did you look under more and the 3 dots and you can record there possibly? Any one of us could record there, but you could.
Okay, it doesn't give me that option. So what I'm hearing, what I'm hearing is that Andrew sees that it's being recorded, and then I'll give you an email to send it to me and to Ines, who is helping us with the portal. So with that, let's pause. Now that others have been able to join us, let's pause for a moment. And John, do you have an opening verse that you would offer before we start in?
Yes. It's very brief. And it's very simple. Speak, O human being, and you reveal through yourself the becoming of worlds.
Rede und du offenbarst durch dich, dass Welten werden. Beautiful. So friends, we gather today on the 30th, on the threshold of the new year. Thank you all for joining us. Hopefully Queen Mother and Patrick will catch up to us. With John McManus. And as I've shared a number of times, I love this story. Excuse me. When I first heard John speak, it was in Harlemville, and he was on a stage, and he said to those gathered, "Would you please stand up?" And people kind of stood up, but not really. And when we got to our feet, John, as I recall, said, "Please sit down again." And people sat down a little bit perplexed, and then John said, "Please stand up." And it began to sink in what he was saying. And so people became a bit more erect and they stood up. But we weren't quite there. So John invited us to sit down a third time, as I recall. And then he said, "Please stand up." And we got it. We are erect. We are upright. And may we bring that erectness and uprightness to our use of this technology that brings us together, that embodies much suffering. It's been suggested by the elemental world, chained fixations to these contraptions that trap many of us, so that we can bring a redemptive impulse to this gathering today with John. John, a warm welcome. Thank you very much for responding as you did to the call.
Thank you, Stuart, and thank you everyone for being here. That was a long time ago when I asked people to stand up, and I kept asking them again and again to stand up. And the reason was because I wanted to do some speech with them, and there was just a habitual unconscious movement that it was very hard to work with. So I didn't plan it. It just seemed to, I can't really work with this until people are really present. And then I've been thinking about, well, what is it to stand up? And this question is kind of living with me. And I wanted to just sort of explore that a little bit today. Each of us has had this really amazing experience when in our first year of life, when we actually stood up for the first time in our life. And it was a real victory over the earth, over the forces of the earth. And yet we were not yet on the earth. So it was out of divine and cosmic forces that we were able to do that. And we were supported in this way of a gift, this first gift, this foundational gift of standing up. And so somewhere in us, we have this amazing power to stand up. And I'm sure in every one of your lives, in experiences that you've had a moment where you've had to really stand up. I don't mean just stand up, but really stand up for yourself, stand up for another, stand up for your moral ideas, stand up for freedom, stand up for someone you love, and it goes on. And there may be one experience, and I'm looking to you, Andrew, right now, because I heard your story about your age of 50, where you, in some way, had to stand up and and say enough and take a real stand. And that's what I'm wanting to address. And I know we've all had those experiences, but they come in different forms. They come in excess, two extremes. We can get really angry and we can stand up and we can be really reactive in that moment, or we can half-heartedly do it. But what I really want to explore is those special moments, those real moments where something actually comes like a divine gift, the real essence of standing up, something of this gift that we were given when we were a child comes to us again. And it goes a little bit like this. we might be in the presence of evil or some injustice or some great wrong, and we feel the dilemma. We feel it really strongly within ourselves, and we feel like this is really scary because we know that whatever we say, there's a big energy here, and this energy is dangerous. And so we have that sense, and at the same time, we feel like, oh, we can just pull away and hide. But so we don't really know what we're going to do. We just are really caught in this uncomfortable place, very uncomfortable. And then we just find ourselves standing up with tremendous ease and speaking as if we're not speaking, as if someone is speaking through us. And this experience then goes out into the world. It penetrates and resonates in the world, and the world responds in a way that we've never experienced before. Something is given back to us. And my experience in those times is that all of a sudden the blood is warm and it's surging through my body. And I am expanding in this clarity. And I want to suggest that that is what, that is the Holy Spirit. And the Holy Spirit, and so there's something about this standing up that is the basis of inviting the Holy Spirit. To have the strength to be there in the dilemma, not reacting, not hiding away, but just staying in the discomfort that I find there is a possibility that we can somehow revisit this original gift that we were given, where divine and cosmic forces come to our aid. And so that's what I just wanted to bring to this standing up. But all of that, and I don't want to speak for long because I would not want to hear what other people have to say, because this is a really universal and personal experience for all of us. And it's very, very different. And I know that we've had these experiences. And they're very, very sublime in a way. Yeah. But that's an outer experience, and it's like a gift. My question about standing up really goes to uprightness. And can we apply this to our inner life? And that's really the point here. I think that there's, Bill, I see your hand up.
Just a moment, Bill. Let's John isn't going to speak long, but let's have him finish up his offering. And then you're on deck, Bill.
I'm glad that someone's going to speak soon. This golden rule that Stuart, you mentioned earlier in one of the meetings about every step we take in knowledge, we take 3 steps in development of our own character. That is a really difficult thing to fulfill. I think we all know that. Even if we took 1 step in development of our own character, it would be a major victory. And even taking that 1 step, it somehow seems to always evade us, always defeat us, because our habitual mechanism, our thinking, emotional, metabolic mechanism that is so tied to our physical body is so powerful. So to actually take and change anything about our habits and about the way we think and the way we live, etc., takes a huge, huge force. And I know it's not possible to do it just from concepts alone. You can't say, I'm going to change. It won't work. That's my experience. So over and over again, one has to repeat this thing, that the repetition. But so I think that if we could bring this sense of uprightness, we're in the land of gesture now. We're not in the land of concepts and perceptions. We're not in the realm of imagination and memory. We're in the realm of gesture, and gesture, it belongs to the will, and the will moves in a way, a mysterious way. So if we want to actually bring something more than concepts, more than just a resolve, this question of trying to find the sensation and the feeling and the activity of uprightness, inner uprightness, may be a help. I can explain it a little bit clearer. Say if I have a negative thought, that negative thought usually leads to a negative choice, which results in negative behavior, which brings to a negative experience. And that negative experience results in a negative emotion, which then generates another negative thought. And so we get into this vicious circle, which happens very, very quickly. And we're blind to the whole mechanism itself. And so to be able to change that, we have to meet it on all the levels of emotion and will and impulse. So we have to find something that penetrates the organism, not just a concept, but something, an impulse that has a drive to it and a desire strong enough to be able to make those changes. And I believe and I hope and I'm searching for the possibility that this may be in the experience of uprightness if we practice it as a sensation and not just an idea. Because as an idea, we can be self-righteous with this idea. But as a sensation, it's something that you can actually put in your body, move that activity through your body, and that then takes up all what would be expressed by reaction. It holds you back from the first impulse that comes out of the mechanism or the vicious circle. So this is where I am kind of exploring a little bit with this idea of standing up, becoming an inner uprightness. But not something as a concept, but something that you can practice in your being, and you can do it at any time. And you can even sense the results of it. Just the last thing I wanted to say is just that this to give an example of that. And then I'm just going to open it up. Not so long ago, somebody was really berating me, was really angry with me and telling me all the things that I was doing wrong, etc. And I knew if I had responded to this person, it would have just aggravated the whole thing, and it would have accelerated and generated even more confusion, let's say. So I just sort of went into myself, into this inner sensation and feeling and movement of this activity of just being upright. And it's a reaching down and a reaching up and an opening to receive something. And as I did that, this person relaxed and melted and everything disappeared. My tendency, my impulse was to argue, but it was replaced by this, and the whole thing was resolved. So I'm just sharing some of my own experiences of what I'm just working with and trying to understand. And I would like to open it up to others who have any insights into this experience of what it is to stand up, what it is to find a true uprightness that is connected to
So John, before we go there, if you allow me, I want to go to the theme that was offered, because when I formulated the theme and I thought, who could hear it? I knew that John McManus could hear it. So might I invite you, before we open it up, to speak to it a bit more? And that theme is that I tried to address when a few days ago, and I talked about I was out of step, the 3 steps to one. The theme is what, friends, is the most decisive, dispassionate, enlightened, illuminating critique of your own life and labors that you would offer as an exercise in self-knowledge, as an exercise in offering to those, our children or those to come, vital lessons we've learned on this path of anthroposophia, and to accompany friend Rudolf Steiner, who I would say, and we tried to show this in the Biely's description of him on Christmas, made himself totally vulnerable, a shepherd, in this heart-rending picture. So John, if you wish to speak a little more specifically in the spirit of also friend Rudolf Steiner's words, get to know one another, because that is a hope that those who've gathered now, and many are here consistently, that a band or a bond, as in Carl Koenig's other Christmas story, can form within and related to the society and the movement anthroposophy that can be a bond of true friendship, of sharing of our trials and tribulations. So again, before we open it up, if you care to speak to that a little more directly, John, be lovely to hear. So a critique of how could we have done better? A critique of our life and labors.
Well, that goes into the realm of regrets and looking back on past experiences and seeing how incomplete, how inadequate, and see how I have acted in those moments where I may have held on or not wanting to be seen, not wanting to and how that's kind of as a pattern of even experiencing a lot of fear and nervousness around speaking, around being seen, even though I'm an actor, but that's part of overcoming it. And we do what we have to learn. And so there is this incredible shame of revealing the wound because we're so attached to the wound. And so I feel that something in me hides away all the time. And so it was hard for me to answer this call, to say yes to this, because here to come to speak creates a lot of anxiety in me. And yet it seems to do that over and over again. And that anxiety is something I'm always facing. And the repetition of it, of facing it, doesn't seem to get any easier. But nevertheless, I kind of be able to go through it.
John, beautiful. So I experience I mean, when I outlined this painstakingly, you immediately, a part of your being immediately said yes. Thank you for what you've added, because it's our humanity, our greatest strength, I believe, through the trials and tribulations I've been granted, is our vulnerability, is our humanity. So thank you. And those who've spoken thus far, some have addressed it, some have not. John Rood is before us, and others who are before us, Bernhard, I hope, Stephanie, feel free here in this circle when your time comes to share, because that's when we truly meet. So John, thank you. So let's open the floor. Bill Bloom, are you there, brother? Your hand is up. The floor is yours.
I'm here, but I'm not all there. Well, I was reminded, it was earlier in my incarnation at the age of about 21, when in Pennsylvania, where I grew up, that I was, we were permitted to go into bar rooms. And so I go into a neighborhood bar room, and a young fellow decided that he wanted to take me outside and fight with me. And so looking back on it, I think I wonder if it wasn't an indication of something that I brought from a previous incarnation in a sort of a quick way. It came to me to say, I don't know why I would want to do that. And I kept on that theme until the fellow just walked out, and an old guy next to him sitting at the bar, who of course sitting there drinking, he complimented me for that. And then I just another thought, standing up, George Washington and Thomas Jefferson was both about 6'4", I think, or thereabouts. And George Washington's head was kind of like straining towards the stars, I'd say. And Jefferson's was kind of, he'd kind of sit down in a sloppy way and read and go out of his way, when he had to take something from this, whatever they were doing, I don't know, the getting ready for Declaration of Independence in Philadelphia or whatever. And he would have to once in a while take something back to it. Maybe it was Constitutional Convention or something like that. But once in a while, he would have to take something back to Virginia and talk to his people about some decision that they were trying to make at this convention. And he'd ride 50 miles out of his way on his horse to a bookshop that he heard of. Anyway. So standing up and was a little different, for him. He didn't stand as nearly straight. And me with my widow's hump, I've been lately trying to stand like George Washington when I'm doing some of my eurythmy or things like that. Just feeling my head stretching towards the stars rather than slumping. So that's a little bit of a something or another.
Thank you, Bill. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Joseph, are you?
Yeah, I don't know how you do that, but I have a couple of images germinating, but one just came when Bill began his story
about the bar. I was quite a bit younger, probably about, I don't know how old I was, 12 or something, maybe a bit older. And I was at a friend's house, and I would say that even then, maybe between the two, I'd be a bit more like Thomas Jefferson, not really a warrior. And but there was a neighbor who I didn't know well, and he was clearly a tough guy. I think the whole family is mafia. And but we were kids, and I don't remember the episode or how it came about, but he clearly, the equivalent of wanting to step outside and fight for 12-year-olds. I don't remember the words. And I sort of, I think a bit actingly, not out of any, I think not out of any depth at all, just sort of stood up. But well, maybe that's the wrong word in its context, but sidled up to him as if, well, my other friends here, I'm gonna just stand up. And he immediately, the next thing I knew, I was on the floor. He had a good technique to be able to flip me upside down and leave me on the floor. And I haven't thought about that, I don't think, for decades and decades. But your story brings it back, and I don't know what to make of it, except that it feels right. Feels a appropriate place to end up when my standing up isn't really standing up.
Lovely. Was there a second thought, Joseph?
Yeah, there were others germinating. I'm not sure if they're ripe yet. Well, I'll just say how they are. So I'm spending a lot of time at these ancient stones, which we've mentioned a little bit. And people will come and look at them, and sometimes we'll observe them together. And everyone who comes and looks at the stones is standing up. These stones, just to describe them, you're facing a facade of 8 stones, and the 2 central ones are probably about 12 or 15 feet tall, and others are a little bit shorter than that, but none of them are quite, the shortest one is a little bit taller than we are. So you stand up to look at them and take them in, and maybe even discover some experiences. And I don't think, well, certainly for me, I was there for years without noticing that it's this structure and the way it's made is standing up and actually calling on me to stand up. We would do it in this situation, without noticing it. And I would say that maybe that's true of all the people that I've met there, that we're just doing it. I don't think we're noticing that we're not even noticing the gesture of standing up, except in one situation I realize now as I'm describing it, which is that the 2 central stones lean slightly. But then you pause and wonder, what do I mean by that? Lean compared to what? And when you start to pay attention, they're not leaning compared to the landscape. They're quite perpendicular to the landscape. They're leaning compared to your own uprightness. But that, for me anyway, takes quite a bit of attention to notice that. So what am I saying? I'm saying there's a kind of a gesture of standing up that I'm not noticing its origin, and maybe I'm not fully inhabiting it. And the picture sort of resonates with that. I recently saw some photographs that some people took at these stones, and there's me up on the mound, and I'm standing up and looking at them, but I'm really not very upright. I'm a little bit Jefferson slouching.
Thank you, Joe. Thank you, Joe. John, I noticed you were tuning in at one moment when he was speaking. Was there something that resonated?
Which John?
John McManus.
I was just no, but I don't recall that I had anything to say. But now that I'm speaking, I recall this story you told, Stuart, about Queen Mother and Governor Wallace, and about how she said, why cannot my children go to the same school as your children? And behind that, I could sense that there was a lot of hurt, a lot of injustice, a lot of disappointment, you know, a large amount of emotion, or just to go into an imaginary experience of someone else's experience. And then he gave the answer, and she said, I understand. And my question was, for a long time after hearing that story, what actually happened between the question and the understanding? Something was pulled together, something came to a real uprightness to be able to make that statement.
I wonder, Charlene, could you go on mute because there's background noise coming in, if that's possible. What comes to me, John, is to stand up or to understand. To stand up or to understand. Can we stand up straight if we're not understanding? Other comments, friends? Moira, thank you.
Thank you, John, for what you offered. And I appreciated this picture of this reaching down and reaching up as this picture of uprightness, and the story you told about this inward movement that happens. And it made me think about also the mineral world that Joseph just mentioned, and also the plant world. And we had a situation where the trees were covered with ice. And I was noticing what the trees were bearing. You know, they were sort of bearing this sensation of being in the ice, and how the plant world models that uprightness, just like Joseph told about the standing stones with that upright gesture. So it's in the mineral world, it's in the plant world. You know, the animal world has its own orientation, and then the human being coming to uprightness. And so in the trees just standing there all around us, this model of uprightness. And in certain flowers too, like echinacea and mullein that stand up so tall. I think they can move that inner movement within that John talked about. We can feel as a sensation in our body, calling us to our own uprightness, because we are in the physical world also surrounded by it.
Beautiful. Thank you. Thank you, Moira. Patricia, if you're there, do I hear something coming from you? If you can hear us. Otherwise, other comments. Andrew, were you going to offer something?
Well, thank you, Stuart. Actually, I had a contrarian thought of a kind. As you may or may not know, a few years ago, UNESCO designated reggae as an intangible cultural
Can I help you with moving house?
Patricia, We are looking forward to hearing from you in just a moment. Andrew's speaking now, but then we'd love to see you and invite your comment.
You can defer to Patricia. I have no problem with that. Patricia, please go right ahead.
Yes, you all, I am I'm caretaking at the moment, and so I haven't been able today, especially, to be with you as much, but leaving the doors open so that I could take part in the night, which is about now, but to be in step with what's gone on. I'm a little bit not with you. So I'm sorry.
Thank you. Thank you for letting us hear your voice. And welcome, Helvi. So Andrew, please continue.
Oh, thank you. Oh, thank you. Thank you very much. Yes, it was back in 2018 that UNESCO officially recognized Jamaican reggae music as an intangible cultural heritage of humanity. And I speak to this from my own background. Stuart, as you know, I've recognized various lineages of my own, including Gullah Geechee, and that connects back to the African continent. But in Jamaica, and this reggae music, this intangible cultural heritage, it speaks of not so much standing or understanding, but overstanding. And in that respect, that may be the connection that was mentioned, or that Queen Mother, the instance between Queen Mother asking that question, getting that the answer, and her quote understanding, it may have been a case of overstanding, where she had to project herself from her own consciousness into the understanding and consciousness of Governor Wallace at that time. But that creates what I would refer to as overstanding. And much like the situation we spoke of yesterday, when Robert Heinlein introduced the concept of rocking and being consciously aware of the entire environment, including the intangible and intangible aspects of it. For example, here on Earth, being in touch with the Gaia consciousness of everything, all connected together, whether it's visible or invisible. That, again, here speaks to perhaps an overstanding that's necessary from a standpoint that's beyond our everyday consciousness. So that's how it speaks to me. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrew. Carl, comments? Your hand was up, and then Stephanie's nodding. Maybe Stephanie has something to offer. But Carl.
Yeah, I think there's something in language that captures this question about dignity, standing up, and I think it's the fact. It appears to be a fact that there are only 5 things we can do when we use language. And the thing that we can do when we use language that confers dignity is we can make a judgment of truth. And so if we're in the habit and in the company of others who want to confine themselves to truth, our speech stands up by itself. So what is that saying? Well, it's saying that every time an assertion is made and the predicate is operationalized, it better be true. And it better be something that everyone notices as true. that would be an interesting world. I'm interested in that world. You can do other things. You can promise something. You can ask for somebody else to do something. You can say ouch, and you can say class is dismissed, or you can make a judgment. You can assert truth. But nobody knows that, and nobody's really all that interested in it, because it's just not on the front burner anywhere. But that would be a theory of conversation.
And Carl, are you relating this to being upright in our communications in terms of John brought?
Yeah, in John's sense, I think.
Thank you. Thank you. Stephanie, what moves in your heart, dear sister? Yeah, I think Stephanie may be in an environment where she can't speak much in the children's library. Anything you want to whisper to us, Stephanie? So you have to come off mute. Should we be on the edge of our seat, or are you deferring? Are you going to give us a hint? Perhaps Patricia can offer a word for you.
I think in bringing this example, it's really not what you're speaking of, but I thought I would bring it as an observation of the child before the eye, before standing. As I remember listening to Georg Kuhlewind in that was Rudolf Steiner College, and he'd asked us what our first memory was. I don't know if you've heard that from him. And so we all had a moment to think, and I do. I have a memory that is earlier than what it should be, I think. But and that is of myself sitting in a high chair, and my mother in front of me, and we're in the kitchen, checkered floor, refrigerator's back here somewhere. There's a friend of hers who's visiting, and she's on my right. And my mother has a spoon with who knows what, oatmeal or whatnot, and is doing that airplane, zoom and take a bite, I'm thinking, and I'm left smiling, and I'm thinking, isn't she cute? So I'm when I say, and I can't say I'm but or I am, but I'm not just in the body. I'm out here to the recesses of the room, and there's the clock or whatever I'm able to view, and just this side of heaven, and enjoying it. Appreciating my mother, who's probably thinking the same thing. Thank you for your laughter. And so it's like, where is that? Where does that come? And how is it when we don't have that anymore? Um,
Very good.
Start somewhere. There's a saying by Hazrat Inayat Khan, a Sufi mystic. The child brings. Okay, I have to bring it. The air of heaven the child brings to me when it comes on earth.
The air of heaven the child brings to me when it comes on earth.
The air, AIR, the air of heaven the child brings to me when it comes on earth. Yeah.
Beautiful.
Mhm. Thank you.
Thank you, Patricia. Any other comments, friends, to what John has offered? John Root.
So I had two experiences of standing up that came to mind while John was talking. One of my experiences that sort of became part of a theme of my life was that my friends, we were all playing in the backyard, and my neighbor was epileptic and mentally retarded, and they started teasing him. And they were intent on getting him to that place where he would lose it and throw stuff and yell and scream, and his mother would have to come out and get him. Anyway, I stopped it. I took a swing at the ringleader and more or less connected nicely, and and I was surprised, but I really felt that need to stand up. Right? In other words, I couldn't allow this situation to continue and escalate. It wasn't right. And then the other experience that occurred to me was I had been warned. My girlfriend lived not quite on Central Park on the west side, but above 110th Street. And so you're not allowed to walk in Central Park at night. And I was having none of that. And I got accosted with my girlfriend with me, and we're walking through Central Park after dark, not in the summer. And we were accosted by a couple of thugs who wanted our money, etc. And I simply said, "You do not want to do this." And I succeeded just from that conviction. Maybe I don't really know exactly why, but my experience was, you don't want to do this. This is not going to be good for you. It's not going to be good for anybody. It's going to have a horrible effect on your life, and they backed down and went away. So those are two sort of very different experiences of standing up. And what they have in common, in which I heard John avoid saying from a certain point of view, is that the thing in our lives that makes us stand up reliably is righteous anger. And the way in which the righteous anger that used to right the world has been mitigated is scrolling and Hollywood.
Sorry, John, is what?
Scrolling, I was just reading in the Epic Times about the acknowledgement in Silicon Valley that the kids aren't allowed to scroll. They're not allowed to have their devices and spend all that screen time. And in Silicon Valley, right, where there are lots of Waldorf schools as well. But so there's the manipulation of the culture that has, to a certain extent, obviated the importance of righteous anger. It's also because it doesn't do any good in trying to deal with the political situation. Anyway, so that would be my contribution to standing up.
Thank you. Those who haven't spoken, Joel, Kirk, Stephanie, I don't know if your hand just went up again, Bernhardt, but yeah, any other comments, friends? Joel. And then Bernhardt, perhaps.
Can you hear me all right?
Yep.
Okay. I'm kind of deaf. Anyway, there's been an odd train of thought in my mind over the last day or so, and it has a strange connection to this. It comes from a sort of different direction. But I was using in certain circumstances the word spine, S-P-I-N-E. And in the sense of spine, I was thinking of, do you have the spine for it? And I think that somehow resonates with the same kind of thing we're discussing, you know. To stand up, you kind of need a spine, right? And then in my own weird way that tends to do this, I started thinking about the fact that the Americas, and from one point of view, could be seen as possessing the spine of the planet. And what does that mean for what goes on in the Americas? And to me, all of these things mean that where the Center for American Studies is located in a certain kind of place, which is more peripheral, you know, via the medium than anything, but I have, I think, access to forces to stand up and have some spine with regard to the current problems in our government, if we choose. And I don't say that we should or not, but one of the things I've been wondering, and I don't need an answer right now, I just in the background of what we're doing, is where do you, Stuart, want to help us get with the goals of the center as you picture them? Because that's the essential thing. You have this inner picture that you manifest and you stand up with, and I want to support that.
Joel, thank you. Thank you very much for your words, old friend and colleague. I'll come to that, but I think I wanted to ask Bernhardt. Bernhardt, what does it mean? What did it mean for an East German behind the Iron Curtain to stand up?
Yes, thank you. First of all, so I wanted to say that John Root's examples, there are two examples I could also talk about. So in childhood, similar to what John experienced, and in Central Park with the mugging in New York City in a subway system, which was slightly different, but it was also, I didn't say anything, but I thought. So when they took the money, I thought, well, hopefully he will give me back my wallet because it was given to me by my Estonian friend. And that's what he did. He took out the money and handed me back the wallet. So that's about that. But in East Germany, so-called, my father is from East Germany, so he grew up in Western Prussia, which was then handed over to Poland and parts of Eastern Prussia to the Soviet Union. So that's the true East Germany. And then the misnomer is the East Germany I grew up in. And there was always a squabble about that. Was it East Germany? Would we call the Federal Republic of Germany, West Germany? And there was always a political nonsense going on. But when I grew up, I was pretty much sheltered for a long time. I grew up in a village. And then I took my path. I wanted to study language. And the director of my high school told me, so you never will get there because you don't have the political credentials. And I still wanted to pursue it. So I went up to the University of Greifswald, where I had, so they had the screening of the students. So and because I was always interested in foreign politics, so I was keeping the monthly or the weekly magazine for foreign policy, so in communist East Germany, and I read everything because I wanted to learn about other countries. And so I was well prepared. And so I got in. I got to study that. And my father had warned me, if you study that, you will get in trouble. And so I did. So I did get in trouble, and it was kind of a marginal trouble, but it was profound. It was the trouble I got into was that the secret police arrested a friend of mine. He was put in prison for the crime of wanting to leave the country. And so then I was taken in from my studies. I was taken into their headquarters, and I spent 8 hours. And I was not arrested, but I couldn't leave. So they interrogated me, and I was at the age of, what was I, 26, I think, 26 or so. And then they did the same thing when I graduated at the end. So they interrogated me again. And then he said, what do you want to do with your degree? You won't be able to work anywhere. And so that's what happened. So I couldn't find any work because they blocked everything. Because the reason was that I was, it's about standing up in a certain way. And it was, most people said it's stupid. So I was stupid. So basically I was stupid. And I was stupid in the situation because I did not put down my friend. So I stuck to my friend, and then later they asked me, so are you going to meet him? I said, yes, of course, he's my friend. And it was the wrong answer. So it was the wrong answer. And so that basically demolished the career. But then, of course, East Germany collapsed 2 years later. So it was at the end of East Germany. Then the wall fell, and I came to the West, came first to West Berlin and then to New York. So that was the thing about standing up. It was more out of the way I am. It was not. It was not. No. Then later on, I had to think about how do I protect my family? How do I protect my friends? Because if I do the wrong steps, then they are in trouble. Because that's how the system worked. So everybody got in trouble around you. You had a toxic atmosphere if you were singled out to be an enemy of the people. So. But it was only at the end. And so I was kind of protected for most of the time because I was focused on studying. I was not interested in getting involved in any opposition or anything like that. And even in that case, it was just because of a friend. But the concept of understanding and overstanding, that was a very good point that Patrick made. So this question of overstanding, I was introduced at a Thoreau Society gathering in Concord. One time I talked to Gordon Boudreau. I don't know if anybody knows him. He wrote this book, and that he said that was the main idea for his book, The Roots of Walden. The Roots of Walden, that is Thoreau's relation to Christianity, so the Christian roots of Henry Thoreau. And he said, so he came to this conclusion that Thoreau was all about standing under. So in order to understand. So you have to stand under something, that means contemplate, in order to be able to understand. And so that's what I found being in America now for a long time. So I lived in East Germany, of course, then West Berlin, then here in New York City, Brooklyn, Manhattan. Then I lived in Denmark for some time, and I lived forever, which was the shortest time in Scotland, but it felt like forever because it was so rich in Scotland. And then now I'm in Wisconsin. So I lived in different places. And so this concept of standing under is this concept also of the pauses. So I speak now very fast, but one should pause. Some of you speak very well because you have these pauses in between. And it's very lost on, I think, very lost in this culture, the Western culture, that the pauses are more important than what is filled with words. So that's how far I want to go here.
Thank you, Bernhard. So I want to share a couple of quick stories and then give you all a question with one of the stories. As a young American, I did a lot of sports, and I remember being not standing up, but being in a blocking stance in football. So in other words, I was down. My one hand was, my fist on the ground, and there was an upperclassman in front of me who I was supposed to, surge up and block. And I really honored this person, who was an upperclassman, and I really respected him. And he whispered, "Don't hit me too hard, Stuart." And in that moment, I stood up. I didn't block him. I just stood up. And I said, "My God, what are we doing? What is this about? What do we young men put through?" I also, we had intramural boxing and wrestling. And I was matched up with a classmate who wasn't a good athlete, never mind a good boxer. And I was all too accomplished. And I said to the referee, this isn't a fair match. I'm not gonna box him. And apparently the referee hadn't heard anybody say that to him. So he said, "You have to." So I took off my gloves and I dropped them and I walked away. Now, this friend of mine who I was supposed to box, he couldn't show, he had to be a young man, so he couldn't show his trepidation, but he knew it wasn't a fair match. So that was the second experience for me of standing up, which was to walk away. But the main thing I wanted to share, John, and it's a bit of a mystery, and I would welcome everybody's feedback, anybody who wishes to respond to it. I found myself doing for a couple of years an exercise every morning where I would try to stand up straight when I get out of bed. And I would begin by leaning way to the left. And then I would come across to the center, just touching a point in the center, and then I'd lean way to the right, and I would narrow the arc until I was just touching this point between left and right, and I'd do the same thing front and back. Every morning, just touching this point, narrowing the arc. So I'm just brushing this point between front and back, and then I do up and down. Well, I took this exercise to meet Herr Backhoff, who's the head of the Bochum Bank, which is an Anthroposophical bank in Germany. I was doing a series of reportages on different aspects of anthroposophy. And it was an interesting meeting because it was one of those meetings which perhaps you all have experienced where you don't quite find the thread. So here I was with a busy person who's the head of a major bank who was kind enough to meet this young American, but we didn't find the thread. So I thought after 15 minutes, well, I just have one last question, and I'm going to thank him and I'm going to depart. Well, before I could ask the question, he got a call from America, and he excused himself and turned around and took the call. I had said, "Just one last question, Herr Backhoff." And he took the call, and 15 minutes later, he turned around and he said, "What was that question, Stuart?" Well, I was surprised because I was just going to leave when he finished. And I said, "The court fool, the court fool." And then I actually got up. I've been known to do these sort of things. I actually got up in front of him in his office, and I did this exercise. Left, right, front, back, up, down. And at the end of it, I would go like this. I would cross my arms and I would put them out when I had done these 3 dimensions, because I discovered that there's a point that's also a space, because it's a pulse, it breathes, it contracts, it expands between these 3 dimensions, which in my experience was the passageway whereby the secret passageway whereby the fool enters into the king's court. That's what just came to me. I'm not saying there's any logic or meaning to it, but that was my experience, is that there's a point, which is also a space between these 3 dimensions. I did this in front of him, and I did this in front of him. And I said, there's a point that's also a space between the 3 dimensions whereby the fool enters into the king's court, the fool being the higher self of the king. And we found our thread. And Herr Backhoff and I spoke for about an hour. So I'd be curious if I can ask John how that speaks to you, but if people wish, don't feel obliged. I'd be very interested in what reactions, if any, you have to this kind of episode that I just tried to describe.
Well, I'm just reminded that there's a crack in everything. And finding that crack, whether it's between left and right, forward and back, up and down, it's what I experience in this dread of coming here and talking about something like standing up that I kind of had prepared, and I felt a little uncomfortable with the whole thing. But when you asked me to go off script, I had nothing. And then I had to find something, and I had to find a crack to come into. And then I had a sense that it was more interesting than what I was saying earlier. And I think that makes the difference. And so you found a crack that somehow was more interesting than what you had prepared to talk with him or something. So that's the way I relate to it, that somehow we have to be thrown off the prepared road or the habitual road or the projected road and find our way like a fool into this place where we find our humanity.
Beautiful, beautiful, John. Thank you. Thank you. Ring the bell that still can ring. Forget your perfect offering. There's a crack in everything. That's how the light gets in. Patricia, what is moving in your heart? You're on mute, Patricia.
I'm laughing. I hope you remember this, but I will knock on your door to get it from you again. That was perfect. Again, I'll just bring it. When I was in 6th grade, must have been, I had friends there, one of whom was Danny Thomas, and we all played together. My stepfather was a boxer in college, and so he was teaching me how to box. Of course, that's necessary, right? So I remember his hands up here, and I'm punching this hand and punching that hand, and and well, I'd been given a what could you say? Not just armor, but something to deliver. And you give the surgeon, that's what they do. You make a surgeon, and that's what they do. So I took it to school to punch Danny Thomas in the stomach, but for some reason, I don't know, we were just playing around probably, and I actually hurt him. And I was I'm beside myself. It's like, how could I have done that? And still today, I remember that I punch and hurt someone, and who knows what the reason is, and it's never a good reason or a real reason. And so that comes to mind, and that all of the foes, right or left, will come up with a reason, or supposedly there's a reason for whatever they deliver. And they probably, some of them go home and realize what they've done, and it ruins their life. But, you know, that was a lesson for me early enough that I could put a cap on those, you know, arms and not use them.
Thank you, Patricia. Thank you. Thank you. Kirk, any thoughts from your side? Don't feel obliged. Don't feel obliged. I think you're on mute, Kirk. You're on mute.
As people were talking, I was reflecting on my life, and you know, times when I stood up, you know, I think someone referred to it, but it John just did, but kind of coming to this recognition that the path I was on, in kind of that easy path, you know, like, you know, I graduated college, got a good job. I was making more money than my, you know, father ever had, and then, you know, I knew that I needed to do something else, and quit that job, went back to graduate school, and my parents were appalled. You know, they were Depression children, and you know, if you had a good job, you hung on to it. And that was a time, and then I had another really good job after graduate school, but I left that job and went to Rudolf Steiner College for a year to study with Dennis Klochek. And again, everybody was appalled. You know, when you got 15 years with a, you know, a Fortune 500 company, they think they've got you for life, and don't kind of walk away from that. As one friend said, well, it's a move, but it's not a career move. But, you know, it's for me, it was kind of to step into that unknown, but knowing that I had to go a different direction, in that uprightness, for me. And yeah, I mean, and it's all it's all worked out in its own way. And you know, the other example in my life, and this is kind of goes to Stuart's theme. You know, I had a girlfriend, and she was a Catholic girl, and and I was at the point where I knew that I was never going to be a Catholic boy, finishing grad school, and I knew that I wouldn't marry her. And then, kind of been saying goodbye, we got pregnant, and yet I knew that, and it's kind of a reverse logic. I was uncertain that I could stand for my spiritual journey in a marriage with her, and so I didn't marry her. I supported her. I know it was a really painful time for her, and probably for my daughter. You know, now it's worked out well. My daughter's one of the best things in my life. But I knew that if I went into the marriage, that I would be really really hampered from my search, and that was without even knowing what I was going to, but I just knew that I had to keep going. So that's kind of my my thought. I think the uprightness. One other thing I could add. Steiner, in a private conversation with Count Kaiserlink, the host of the agriculture course, she asked him about a golden ball, a golden sphere at the center of the earth, and Steiner confirmed that as part of the gifts of the mystery of Golgotha left in the earth, this Christic golden ball, you could say, of love. And that's kind of the seed for us to turn the earth into a sun of love. But, we can connect with that. And as we stand up, that going down, as John described, our heart can connect with that golden ball of love at the center of the earth. I've been thinking about it. I'm not sure when we go up, certainly the Father's up there and lots of other benevolent spirits. Maybe we're just opening to the cosmos to give us inspiration at that moment. So, thank you.
Stuart, you need to unmute.
Oh, I'm sorry. My apologies. So I said my apologies. Thank you, John. Kirk, you've given us a gift. You shared something quite intimate, and I want to thank you. I want to thank you very much. Before Bernhardt comments, Andrew, would you call Queen Mother and just tell her, even if she wants to come and give the concluding prayer, she's more than welcome if you could reach her. And then let's begin to wrap up. Bernhardt has a comment. I want to offer John the concluding words, just to summarize what he's taken from this and what thoughts he might offer to us. But we can take a few moments still. Bernhardt, go ahead if you wish.
Yes, just very short. So, in reference to what Kirk just said, so Johanna von Kaiserling, she came to Rudolf Steiner with this question: if there was a path into the spiritual world that does not go up through the usually described higher layers of the astral world, the lower Devashan, the higher Devashan, but if she could go through the earth. And this is actually might be very interesting for Carl's project too. So going through the earth, and then she was talking about the fairyland and the ball of gold in the center of the earth. And Steiner said, yes, it's possible, but it's very, very difficult, because before you get to the golden ball, to this heart of gold of the earth, you will have to go through the sphere of the demons. So which is around that. It's surrounded by the sphere of the demons. And it's very difficult because they will tell you you're already there. So they will create a fake heart of gold for you. So, and I wanted to end, I wanted to share this because I have this, sometimes I open a book randomly that is lying around and I find something, and I think this is kind of fitting to what we were talking about from a different perspective. And this is The Complex Vision by John Cowper Powys. You can't see it very well, but it's by John Cowper Powys, The Complex Vision. And I just opened it up randomly, and it says here, and the eternal vision, which was and is to come, is the vision in which Christ, the intermediary between the transitory and the permanent, contemplates the spectacle of the unfathomable world, and is able to endure that spectacle by reason of the creative power of love.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Carl, I'm glad you showed up. I wanted to invite you to offer any final comments. And then, excuse me one moment, Andrew, did you hear me, and have you been able to call Queen Mother? Andrew, are you on mute? Are you there? Actually, Patrick has joined us as well, so I'm going to invite Patrick to say some words if he wishes. So maybe let's hear from Carl and then Patrick. If Andrew hasn't reached Queen Mother, would you be good enough to call her before you speak after Carl, if you wish, and just tell her we'd love to have her give a concluding prayer?
I will reach out.
Thank you. So Carl, any final comments from you? Thank you, Patrick. Any final comments, Carl, from your side?
Nothing stored up. Maybe move on to, let me think.
Take a moment. Joseph's hands up, and then let's go to Patrick when he comes back from the call to Queen Mother, and then let's go to John for concluding reflection. So Joseph, your hand is up.
Yeah. And you can just let this go if it's not helpful, but I'm just articulating that I'm hearing what feel to me like some differing pictures. And one is, well, you're doing something wrong and I'm going to punch you. And, perhaps called for. And one is, forgive me if I don't say this right, but mostly I'm hearing it, I heard it from Carl, I think. I clearly and unafraid and really not worrying about niceties, I say the truth. And one, these all were told in different ways by different people, but one from Kirk, forgive me if I have it, something like, I am walking through this mysterious door. Don't know what's ahead. I know it's safe back there, but I don't know what's ahead. And they feel different to me, maybe even archetypally different. And maybe there's a couple of, I don't know how to say it, but if, I have a hunch they may come together in a couple of places. For example, John's picture of, well, I guess maybe it begins with Stuart's picture of the movement to the left and the right. And somewhere in there, well, there was the space. There was the discovering of an opening space. So
a secret passageway.
So I guess one of the challenges is, how do you find that in battle or in speaking the truth? Like, well, we've heard some examples of it, like Queen Mother's example. Anyway, they feel like different pictures, and it's like in a way, the words coming to me at the moment is, and maybe this goes back to John's original offering, it's a kind of a grace for the space to discover the space.
Beautiful, Joe. You're dealing with the spaces between the columns. Beautiful, thank you. So Patrick, it's good to see you, brother. I don't know how much you've heard, but any comments you wish to offer as we draw this to a conclusion, and then I will speak to Joel's point.
I think this is a very, very interesting discussion about standing up. And I think it's fascinating that there's so many of us who have been kind of like forced into the standing up position. I never saw it as something that I had to pursue, because it's always been something that has confronted me. And just from being profiled by police and growing up in deep South Alabama, standing up is survival. And I just, I've been in some of these situations, and I was thinking about, guess Bernhardt was making his comments about East Germany, and it's a history I've studied a lot, and it's just, I think it's really a fascinating study for us to delve into what motivates us to do the things that we do. And sometimes we're put in these positions where we have to, it's kind of like the fight or flight sort of thing. And I had no idea until maybe around 2015 that there's a part of my family that had, on my father's side, that had this pugilist kind of thing. And my brother grew up in that spirit, and he was a UFC fighter, my brother was. And I had no idea that I had certain capabilities to do these things. And I had been confronted and attacked in such ways that I had to explode and stand up for myself. And I just did not, I never embraced it. Pugilism, I never really embraced it, but I realize that there are a lot of us that are born with that protecting others is just almost like a way of life. And so it's just fascinating to delve into how you pair that with your spiritual understanding and how you interact with others. I have found that as a challenge. So I appreciate hearing others, speaking about this. So I thank you. But that's been my experience.
Patrick. So John, dear brother, we want to give you the final words, and take more than just a moment, take whatever time to reflect upon what you brought and what you've heard from others, if you wish.
Thank you, Stuart. Thank you, everyone, for everything you've said. And just connect with you, Patrick, and how you connected to your spiritual understanding, that there is something that, as we experience in rocking to left and right and forward and back, up and down, that there is something that is very fine and very finely tuned, I should say, and something very much in the balance, that when we discover that, there's a lot outside of it, but there's a kind of sweet spot. And there is no need to react or to punch, as Joseph expressed one side of it. And there is also no need to pull away or to hide, as the other side. But in a sense, one can just stand in it and just allow it, like a grace, to fill that space. And the pictures that have come, that I'm putting together, it's not only an uprightness where we reach towards the heavens and open like a flower, but it's a downrightness as well. And that downrightness reaches all the way to the golden sphere, so that there is a kind of support we stand on that is not like, I'm better than you, but it's, I'm standing in love, and I'm standing in freedom, and I'm standing just not for anything in particular, but just for that space of uprightness, that highway from heaven to earth, that when it moves, it moves. And it is a special experience. It's not an everyday experience. And when we have that special experience, we can be really grateful. And I think gratitude is really important for the development of that. And it's like, as I said in the Bible, when they bring you to trial, do not prepare what you have to say, for I will speak through you. So when we start to prepare, or we get in our own way, and that was my experience so strongly. And coming towards this, I'm just getting in my own way because I don't have enough courage to actually go there and just speak out of myself. Because I feel like I have to come up with something and I have to say something which would be intelligent. And this is an imposition that I placed on myself that was completely not in the center of my being at all. So I want to thank you, Stuart, for throwing me off, or because I really did not understand what you were talking about because it was so complex. But I knew it was something that I had to speak out of myself. And I was lost, and then in that lost, trying to find this left, right, the forward, back, is up and down, and something slowly comes, awkwardly at first, and so and we do experience it in those moments when we stand up for ourselves. We do experience like, no, you're not going to tease this fellow. You're not going, and there's something that comes to us. But that's not what I want to focus on here. I just want to focus on the end of all these pictures and all these experiences, that is uniquely individual. At the same time, it's so universal that we see it and we know it in the other person. And it brings us to presence when someone meets somebody who has that. So thank you all for helping and bringing this to life, and I'll take away your gifts.
Lovely. So John, at the Center for American Studies, and we're approaching our 50th year of work, and you've been part of it in important moments. We don't invite people to give talks or presentations or speeches or lectures. We invite them to bring offerings, because everybody can bring an offering. Everybody has something to offer from their heart of hearts. And that's what this is about. And the sad thing about Harvard, the Harvard gathering, is that when you bring a prepared speech, you're bringing the past into the present, and you're not present. You're not present. You're not connected with those that are there. And that might have been part of the challenge, Carl, with you yesterday with the technology, is that the question is, how can we show up? How can we show up? So to draw this to an end, friends, first of all, I want to answer Joel's question. This has been in a part of response to the Harvard offering. And I know Dan, he's a friend. And I also know the circumstances he's in. And I presented an offering that talked about Rudolf Steiner as a friend, that until we befriend him, we will not understand him. And it's almost for me a curse when people say Steiner. It just jars my whole being. Steiner said. That's why I always say friend Rudolf Steiner. And I was also going to bring Emerson. There was a lot of references in those who gave presentations to Goethe and Christian Rosenkreuz. But here at the Divinity School, where Emerson gave his address, not one word I saw was referencing Emerson. So I was going to also bring the genius of this land there. And my offering was rejected. It didn't entirely surprise me. But it led to this, friends. At the end of the year, something extraordinary needs to happen. And so while I don't want to unduly implicate any of you in my machinations, so to speak, it's becoming clearer to me that having brought this up at the beginning of the year with Mary Adams and the General Council, that we have the wrong name. We are not the Anthroposophical Society in America. The Americas go from Canada down to Argentina. We are the Anthroposophical Society in the United States of America. And if we can't get the name right, how do we expect to get anything right in this work? And I've heard from other Americans that they really resent this hegemony and this imperialism and this lack of consciousness. So on the last day, we're going to do that. We're going to invite, including an individual who a Mohawk brother and former trustee who was the one who called for the return of the peacemaker. We're going to invite those from the Americas to speak. And then we'll have a question. And I welcome all of your thoughts on it, every one of you here, and your critiques, because what do I know? I'm as imbalanced and out of step as anybody. But I feel deep in my heart, Joel, in answer to your question, that what is needed is the Society Fellowship of Anthroposophia, or I haven't quite got the formulation, of Anthroposophia of Columbia. We are the District of Columbia. Columbia is the genius of this land. In the Americas, or you could say AH-MARY-CASA, in the Americas, that if the current society can't face this fact that they have the wrong name, they're misnamed, then as Buckminster Fuller said, instead of, if the system's broken or appears to be, instead of moaning and groaning and cursing, just create a better mousetrap, create a better system. So that's where I'm headed, Joel, and thank you for your question, old friend and colleague, is that without any expectations and without any dues and without any administration and without any general secretaries, that there is a circle of people, beginning perhaps in these holy nights, who want to get it right, at least to begin with in the name, to honor Rudolf Steiner, to honor this friend, this dear friend. So with that, I want to say that tomorrow, Jamin McMillan, a dear old friend, who it's very hard to catch up with Jamin, so we're in for a treat. He's one of the people that's brought this impulse from friend Rudolf Steiner all over the world. He has much to share, and I'm interested how he's going to respond. He is a dear old friend. He was at my wedding. How he's going to respond to this question. Jamin, what is the most decisive, dispassionate, enlightened, illuminating critique of your own life and labors that you would offer us as a gift, as an exercise in self-knowledge, and as sharing of your journey with friend Rudolf Steiner? So we'll be with Jamin tomorrow, and I invite you all to hold Queen Mother in your prayers. I'm very glad you've gotten to know her. She's an older sister. She's a co-chair of the Center for American Studies, and she's a dear, dear soul who, as I've said, and apologies for repeating it, but as I said, have buried 5 of her own children, just buried her sister-in-law a few days ago, whose house blew up and she was burned to death. Now is turning to her son-in-law who's very ill, and it's nonstop. It's nonstop. It's a miracle that she's been with us. But I invite you all to hold her in your thoughts and in your prayers. And I'm going to end with a rendering of the Lord's Prayer that I've shared with Queen Mother. It's a short rendering that grew out of the work of a teacher of mine, Carl Friedrich Althoff, whose study of the Lord's Prayer was in 34 languages. And I have translated this rendering into English. So I'll conclude with that, with this rendering. Our Father thou, in the heights and widths of the world, and in our innermost being, may thy name's illuminations become sanctified through worldwide wisdom in our heads thinking. May thy kingdom's power of transformation be fulfilled through our heart's love. May thy will and freedom accomplished become reality through our hands' deeds. That the individual, that's the human being, as his being originates in the heavens, begins also to live on the earth. Our all original, all daily bread, in which the Spirit erects us, thou givest to us this day. And now, friends, if I may say, the real heart of it, and enable us to be free. So forgive us our trespasses as we forgive those who trespass against us, and enable us to be free, that we see and take upon ourselves the debts to which we in our inner being have fallen, as we also leave free those who've indebted themselves upon our being, that out of the debts the good may arise. If you will, once more, and enable us to be free, that we see and take upon ourselves the debts to which we in our inner being have fallen, as we also leave free those who have indebted themselves upon our being, that out of the debts the good may arise. And let us not entangle ourselves in the compulsion of the tempting forces that blind the soul with deception, but rescue our being out of the burdens and bands and ban of the eye-destroying evil. For thine is the might of being, the power of creation, and the force of light, through which thou workest in us in all coming cycles of time. May this be the ground of truth of our being. Thank you very much. Thank you, Brother John, for being vulnerable as you were today. Thank you for your long pause and finding that crack. Friends, if we can be early as opposed to late, that would be great. If we could be a few minutes early as opposed to late, we carry on tomorrow with Jamin and then with Frank Chester and Orland. So if we can be early as opposed to late, because we do want to start with the prayer instead of people coming in. But thank you very, very much. And whoever, John Root, if you have the recording, can you send it to me and I'll forward it to Ines, who's kind enough to.
I didn't record it. You didn't tell me to.
I did.
Okay, Andrew, then can you send it? I will email you and copy Ines, and if you could send it, and she'll put it up in the portal.
Okay, I'll edit it to begin at the beginning.
Thank you. John, again, thank you very much. Thank you, one and all. Thank you, one and all.
Namaste, everyone. Have a good day. Good day.
Until tomorrow.
Thank you.
Practically very different.
All right, folks, thank you.
Good stuff. But